All right, welcome back to our lectures on living room lectures on Christian ethics. This is going to be a very short lecture on the biblical concept of love as it relates to ethics. So this lecture is derived from the letter of 1 John and that central principle that's found in 1 John, that God is love. God is love, and to be a loving person or to love your neighbor, you must imitate Christ. So God is love, and to be a loving person, you must imitate Christ. So when John says God is love, what he means is by God, we have the definition of love. So I think what would be helpful to think through is a quote from the Russian writer Fyodor Dostoevsky in Brothers Karamazov, where Ivan, one of the characters in the novel, tells his brother Alyosha, because there is no God, all things are lawful. Because there is no God, all things are lawful. What he means by that is if there is no transcendent being, then there's nothing to give us objective ethics. That's, thinking back to our last lecture, that's why general revelation can't give us content. If there is no God, all things are lawful. You have to define good or bad based on the transcendent being. John is doing a similar thing, but instead of thinking about right and wrong, good and bad, what he's thinking about is love. He's saying, by God, through the transcendent being, you define love. Another helpful way to think about this is God is love. That's true. The opposite is not true. Love is God. That's not true. You can't say to yourself, I have this concept of love, and that concept of love defines who God is. You have to do it the other way. I know who God is, and by knowing who God is, I know what love is. So through a transcendent being and through a transcendent being alone, can you actually have a definition of love? Just like only through a transcendent being can you have a definition of good and bad. So then later in the 1 John, he then says how that God defines love, or God is love. And your natural question will be, well then, how does God define love? God defines love, he answers, through the cross. God is love, so I have to look to God to understand what love is. And I go, okay, that's good. What does God tell me love is? And the quintessential example is the cross. The sacrifice that Jesus makes on the cross and is resurrected, that is what we can call the prototype of love. All other loves must be imitating that prototype, or it can't be love. And it can't be love because God is love. And God has defined love this way. So I'm going to go over it one more time just to make sure you guys have it. God is love. By that, the Apostle John is saying, only through God can I have a definition of love. Then you ask, cool, what is the definition of love that God gives? The definition of love that God gives is the cross. Thus, any attempt to love must be an imitation of Jesus on the cross. That's to help you think through the biblical concept of love. Until next time.